Thank you, and good morning. Welcome to Nutrition Capital Network's conference call, Building a Winning Team, Tips on Hiring and Team Building for the Entrepreneur. My name is Mike Dovbish, Executive Director of Nutrition Capital Network. This is a first in a series of conference calls for 2011 intended to assist companies discussing topics that we think would be useful to our broader network. Today's call is co-hosted by Ginni Garner, Principal of Sanford Rose Associates, NCN's Executive Recruiter sponsor. On today's call, I'll be joined by my colleagues and co-founders of NCN, Grant Ferrier and Tom Arts, as well as Ginni Garner, Principal of Sanford Rose and Associates, Terry Hunt, CEO of Wild Planet Seafood, Monty Sharma of Atkins Nutrition. Followed by that, we'll be opening up the lines for Q&A, and we'll be giving out instructions after the final presenter. The purpose of this call is to learn more about building a team from the perspective of seasoned executives in the health and nutrition industry. The mission of Nutrition Capital Network is to help facilitate the financing and partnering process between the next generation of health, wellness, and nutrition companies and the broader investment community. We do this by creating a series of events and tools throughout the year with our two main investor meetings in New York in the spring and California in the fall. The call this morning is the first in a series of calls for 2011, and our next call, How to Position Your Company for Sale or Investment, is scheduled for May of this year.
Ginni is our next speaker, and her background you can read on slide 7 if you have it in front of you, so I won't do all the bullets there, but I'll just say she's got great experience with the top firms. Heidrick & Struggles, one of the best firms in the industry, but now she's off with a smaller firm, Sanford Rose, doing things more on her own because she's capable of doing that, and is, I think, one of the best headhunters I've run into. And she wants to do a lot of work in this industry and has already done some work in this industry. So I'll turn it over to Ginni.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. So, again, my name is Ginni Garner. I run a recruitment firm that helps companies in the healthy living industry find the talent they need to grow. I've been a recruitment professional for the past 15 years, and I've been involved in nutrition, health, and natural products for over 20 years. So I love this industry, and I am passionate about helping companies and people connect. What I wanted to talk about briefly today is recruiting and hiring, and talk about some highlights of how you find people, what you should look for, and actually hiring them. It's a pretty exhaustive subject. I'm going to try to squeeze a bunch of things into 10, 12 minutes. So just, again, some highlights for you. Most of you are starting companies, are looking to build teams, and how do you find great people? The first step in deciding when you're going to bring someone new onto your team is really defining the role. And one of the challenges that I see a lot of hiring managers, or mistakes hiring managers make, is they decide they need to bring on a marketing person. And so they go to the internet, they pull off a marketing job description, and then they say, okay, we'll put our information on here, and then they repost that job. It's kind of a backwards way of deciding what you need. The most important piece of hiring someone is really defining the role. What you do at the beginning will ultimately lead to the success and the ongoing performance of your new hire. So I'd recommend that you sit down with your team and determine what skills and experience you really need in this role, and what are the department goals. So what are you looking to do in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? Write a list of action steps that need to be taken to reach those goals, and you may not know everything that needs to happen, thus why you'd be hiring a marketing or a sales professional or someone in finance, but you have a general idea. Then you're able to decide what this person that you hire will need to accomplish in that time frame, and then you can determine how you'll measure success. You have to do those things before you put a job description together, or you really have a difficult time hiring someone that's going to be effective in the role. You can hire someone, but again, the reason for hiring is to have someone that's going to bring value to your company, And in order to do that, you need to know what that value will be. The second piece you really need to think about is a hiring budget. A lot of entrepreneurs, it's your compensation, your base salary compensation might be lower, but I know that there should be some talk later on about how to incentivize with some equity or bonuses based on performance. So that's a big piece of the compensation package, and I'm assuming that Terry or Monty will speak about that at some point during their conversation. Step number 2 is really getting the word out. And as Tom mentioned, I've been recruiting for 15 years, so headhunting, if you will, recruiting has changed measurably during that time. There is the Internet. So that has become a focal point for companies who are looking to hire. Obviously, the Career Builder, Monster, LinkedIn is very popular right now and very useful. Posting jobs or job advertisements is a great way to get the word out that you're looking. And there are a lot of ways to do that. So you have your job boards, again, LinkedIn, Craigslist. The one cautionary tale about job boards is that you will be inundated by responses. It is not uncommon to get 200 or 300 responses for any job that you would post on a major board or on LinkedIn. You just have to consider the time factor, and generally you'll have a handful of people within those 200 or 300 resumes that will actually be a fit for your role. So just remember that, and remember that there's going to be a time factor in posting jobs and reviewing those applications. Most entrepreneurs go to their networks and look for referrals, and that's really the first step. One of the things that, as you continue in your entrepreneurial ventures, is I recommend starting a resume folder or a possible employee folder. So it's keeping a pipeline of people that you meet all along your path, at trade shows and meetings that might be useful to you as a networking contact or potential employee down the road. I'd also look at college intern programs. Most every city has a intern program. So you can reach out to your university and ask them, and they should be able to connect you with the intern group locally. You can get some great talent very inexpensively. There's obviously careers and job fairs, and then there's the outplacement firms, which I think people forget about, but have been very popular over the last couple of years with the economic downturn. So there's a lot of people that have been going through outplacement, and you might find some talent there. The third bucket would be, as the shameless self-promotion, would be this working with a recruiter. But I only recommend working with someone like myself in certain situations. The number one would be when it's a hard to fill position and you have a limited talent pool. That is definitely number one. When your job ads or your referral network aren't working, if you have to fill something quickly, or a search must be conducted confidentially. So if you are trying to recruit someone from a competitor, it may not be good business for you to go out and try to pull that person in. Professional search consultant could help you with that. There are fees associated, obviously, with using a search consultant, but again, you have to weigh the cost, benefit, time against all in the hiring equation. Hiring, finding people, interviewing, reference checking, background checks takes a lot of time, and it really depends on how much you have as a hiring manager or your team has to devote to that process. So moving on, step 3 would be screening and interviews. And the two things that are really important for this process is, number one, make it a process, and number two, make sure you keep it legal. I don't think people think about legalities, but the EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, could get involved, or could be. You don't need a lawsuit. So there's certain things that you're not allowed to ask during interviews. How old are you? Are you married? What religion are you? Again, there's a whole list of those that you can find, through an HR department, through someone like myself, or, again, at the EEOC website. As far as an interview process, I recommend that you meet someone several times. I recommend that that you spend some time with this person in both a formal and informal situation. One of the things that's very difficult is really establishing what this person's going to be like when you're working with them. I always encourage hiring managers to take this person out to lunch, to breakfast, take them out for a walk, get them engaged in a conversation that's out of an interview personality and see who they really are. The other thing that I really recommend is if you are hiring a sales or marketing person, that you have them do a presentation. Part of their process is what are they going to do in front of your prospects, your clients. Have them do that as part of the interview process. After you've decided who you want to hire, I do highly recommend checking references. I'm sure you've all seen in the news today, there's always somebody who's hired someone misrepresented themselves. I recommend that you talk to at least 3 people that this person has worked with in the past. And for a senior level manager, I would do a 360 reference check, which means in addition to interviewing or talking with people they've reported to, absolutely talk to their peers and their subordinates. You really need to know how this person works with all levels in the organization. Background checks, another essential component today, especially if you're looking at getting equity and money at some point. There's usually a pretty in-depth dive at all the members of the management team, and you'd really rather not have someone on your team coming up with a criminal record or a bankruptcy, especially if they're the CFO of the company. Again, it's kind of crossing your T's and dotting your I's and making sure that the people that you bring onto your team aren't going to hurt you down the line. So I guess the 5th step is when you're making the offer, a couple things that you really need to consider. Compensation packages, again, you might need to offer some kind of equity or performance-based bonus program because your base compensation might not be as high or might not be as competitive as some companies that have been established for a longer period of time. Employment contracts, absolutely for your senior managers, I'd consider putting one together. And again, this just protects you, it protects your company. It outlines their responsibilities. If you have them sign a non-compete, a non-disclosure, it outlines incentives. It gives you the right to terminate, and it also has a contingency plan if they leave. Definitely, work with your attorney, look into an employment contract, look into a non-compete agreement, or if that's a problem, you can always have them sign a non-disclosure. But again, just remember when you're bringing on someone new and you don't know them very well, or even if you do, make sure you protect yourself and your company. So step 6 is really post-hire success. Terry's going to talk about that a bit more. The one thing that I find important for people when they hire new employees is making sure that they onboard them in a welcoming fashion. But I'll let Terry again talk about post-hire success and how you build a team and help it move forward.
Great. Thanks, Ginni. Lots of really good, useful tips. I just want to remind everyone that we will open up the lines for Q&A at the end of the presentation. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please go ahead and email me, and we can bring those up at the end of the call. Our next presenter is Terry Hunt, CEO of Wild Planet Foods. And Terry is also partner of Preserve Capital Group, so he wears a few hats and is quite experienced in the natural products industry, and I'll let him talk about post-hiring success. Terry.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. Just a little background. I was a founder of Sunspire, which was a natural snack company, and we sold that to a private equity firm, and then we rolled up an additional 5 companies into Sunspire and an umbrella company called Inspired, and then sold that to American Capital Strategies, which is a publicly traded investment company. After that, I co-founded another snack company, Energy Well, founding that with a local ultramarathoner, Dean Karnassus, and we sold that company to a private equity firm as well. And then Dean and I went on to manage Good Health Natural Foods out of New York, which is a supplier of veggie chips, olive oil potato chips, really just the snack category, as well as the south of France brand of health and beauty care, mostly soaps and lotions. After that venture, I joined Scott Killips in founding Preserve Capital Group, and our job there was to help companies find funding and going through a lot of the maneuvers that we're discussing today on this call. And one of the companies that came to Preserve Capital Group was Wild Planet. They've been seeking funding for a number of years, and they had a great product, but they just didn't have a bankable team. Now, as a great product, imagine from my perspective, being in the industry for 25 years, to find a category that hasn't been updated. And their product was tuna fish, which had some premium brands, but mainline tuna was still stuck in the 50s. And in fact, the quality was really much worse than found in the 50s, low quality taste and watered down. And Wild Planet came forth, and they had a unique offering of a category that was just beginning to show some wide interest in sustainably caught fish, in this case, tuna. The offering is 100% meat, no water or oil added, with 6 times the omega-3s and half the mercury as compared to the large natural brands like Chicken of the Sea and Bumblebee. So I had Scott and I both saw this as a company that was really extremely unique in that they had a very defensible product and an extremely high hurdle to competition to put forth canned tuna. So I jumped aboard as CEO and hired the best people that I knew for the sales and marketing team as well as for the CFO position. So whereas without the right team, Wild Planet had been looking for funding for over a year, with the right team, we got ideal investors relatively quickly. Well, how do you hire the team? In this case, I happened to be there and recognize it and be available and highly desiring to join Wild Planet. But had I not been in that position, we would have sought somebody to put into place there that would have some marquee value, somebody who's already built and sold a company. This gives investors incredible comfort to invest in the individual who's already demonstrated the success. Investors are going to see hundreds of business plans, and they have a hard time buying into all of the assumptions. It's a lot easier to buy into a proven success, especially if the head person is going to invest their own money. So, as Ginni touched upon, to attract somebody who has already built, sold a company, probably has exited with some financial security, the ideal would be to provide a base salary. They hopefully aren't in a position where that is the main component of their interest, and then with some very attractive options, which can be a 5-year vesting based upon yearly successes. You get a real multiplying effect of the marquee value from this individual if they say, not only will I join the company, but I will invest some of my own money as a lead investor. That's really the sweet spot right there. So once we did that, we found absolutely ideal investors for Wild Planet, people and institutions really aligned with the sustainability mission. And there's a number of firms now that are really specifically organic and sustainability oriented. Those are the 2 hurdles that they have got in their participation, either as an equity partner or as a lending partner. So once you've hired the people and you've attracted them, what about building the team? Well, as Ginni talked about, building the team can largely be done through the people that you have seen in the industry perform at a very high level. I had a couple of people in mind on the sales side that I felt were the best in the industry, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, and with the ability to offer them options, or with a 5-year vesting, I was able to attract them to leave the companies they were with and join me at Wild Planet. That plus the fact that Wild Planet just had this outsized opportunity of participating in a large $3 billion industry, tuna fish, and the opportunities that were laid out in our business plan, and that's really something that I'm sure all of you are diligently working on, is modeling out the opportunity in a way that is that has some metrics that it can be verified by a third party. So now if you have the team in place, Ginni really went through much more about how to hire and bring people into the company. Now you've got them, but people in every workplace talk about building the team, working as a team, but how do we create the experience of teamwork, and how do we develop an effective team? Belonging to a team in the broadest sense is really a result of feeling part of something larger than yourself, and it has a lot to do with the understanding of the mission and objectives of your organization. In a team-oriented environment, you contribute to the overall success of the organization, and you work with fellow members of the organization to present and produce these results. So as Ginni was discussing building the team by accumulating the right individuals who are going to